Yeah. Good evening and happy Wednesday. My name is Takiwa Smith. I'm founder and executive director of Science, Engineering, Mathematics Link Incorporated, and I want to welcome you to our first virtual Teen Science Cafe of the 2023-24 program year. So, the Virtual Teen Science Cafe is a program of our community STEM program which focuses on making sure that we provide opportunities for youth to engage in STEM career exploration activities, hands on activities, interactive demonstrations in person in Metro Atlanta and virtually through our Teen Science Cafe and other programs. And so, one of the reasons that we have a special emphasis on teens with this programming because the teenage years is when you have the opportunity to start thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up and how do I get there. And when it comes to STEM, we do this to allow you to learn about the various STEM career pathways and have people who can give you a glimpse of how you can get there by sharing their own journey, as well as give you a little glimpse of what that career field do. And so for me, I want everybody to become a STEM professional, but sometimes you're not. But the goal is that you can make an educated decision when you attend our Teen Science Cafe because you were exposed to a STEM career pathway by interacting with one of our STEM professionals for our Teen Science Cafes. And so I'm so excited to kick this off with Tere Williams, our speaker. And so I am just going to give a brief synopsis of her because she's so amazing. She's been a supporter of our program with our Teen Science Cafe. And so and plus, she has a unique journey that she'll share. But one of the things that I love about Terry is that she shows that if you like STEM and you have other interests outside of STEM, it's okay to pursue your interest in STEM as well as your other interests. I think a lot of times teens are told you have to pick one um, or pick one or the other or even if you have to do it one at a time, there's no reason for you not to be able to explore the diversity of interests that you have because we're multidimensional people, right? So, Terry Williams is the CEO and co founder of Dub Biologics. Prior to returning to science full time, she had a significant professional career both as a basketball player and a singer. Williams currently consults for life science and healthcare companies through her startup, Simon Pertech. I think I'm saying that wrong. But overall, Dr. Williams has more than 15 years experience initiating and leading programs and small business ventures addressing needs and within the community and a strong track record of leadership at each stage of her professional career, which now includes biomedical research. Williams has worked on projects ranging from risk assessment to equity research and other areas for companies with I cannot say none of these words because I'm a chemical engineer, but immune oncology, allergy, autoimmune, and rare disease next generation therapeutics. I have an engineering degree, so I'm like, I guess this is making sure people, can get healthy when they get sick. She has also participated in industry training programs and has been invited to speak for the Central New York Bioaccelerator and other organizations on subjects ranging from opportunities and innovation to the importance of mentorship for diversifying STEM research. So I'm going to stop talking and go ahead and let Dr. Williams, tell you her career path and guide you, and most importantly, teach you you can do multiple interests if you like STEM.
Thank you, Takiwa, for that introduction, and just want to thank everybody for being here today. You could be anywhere in the world, but you chose to talk about STEM with me, and I'm very happy and excited to talk about it. So let's get into it. Takiwa mentioned that I have a very interesting background, and I do. And I am very, very happy to start discussing my background. So there's so many places that I can start. But ever since I was a child, I was always curious about the world that was around me. And of course, STEM includes the disciplines of science, engineering, and math. But I remember, like, I'm a country girl. I love being from the country, and I would just wander around in the backyard where we had lots of forests and trees and wooded areas that had creeks. And I was fascinated by the life in these different types of ecosystems. Outside in the morning, I would jump up and wake up early just so that I could watch the leaves gather dew from the moisture of the morning. I would watch bugs. I was one of those kids that would run around catching bugs because I thought it was fun. And this wasn't required for your high school entomology project or, bud catching experiment. I was catching them because I thought it was fun. And it's not just lightning bugs. I was into grasshoppers and spiders, and, I was into like everything. And what that really demonstrated, at least to me, is that I had a fascination with science, particularly biology, which is the study of all living things. So when I grew up and went to college, I knew that I wanted to study biology. And, obviously, education is a huge part of success, particularly from people from underserved areas. And I went to Virginia Tech on a basketball scholarship that Takiwa mentioned already in 1997. That was quite a bit of time ago. But it was great for me because I could learn a lot of those concepts in a forum where it was much more elevated than, say, high school or middle school. And of course, my D1 scholarship paid for it, right? But there's other ways that you can get your academic careers paid for through other sports, military service, or you can just be really smart. All of these things will pay your way to college if you don't have parents who can afford it or if you're not funding it yourself. I was an athlete, as I mentioned, but my grades once I got to college really suffered from the amount of time that I was spending on the court. You could say I was distracted. It was really a lot for me. And as I reflected back not too long ago, I was reminded that I was sick. So I had mono my senior year of high school, and I'm certain that I wasn't healed in full from that. And I certainly think that the rigor of the practices that I was going to at the collegiate level kind of threw me back into some sort of fatigue type of sickness of that chronic disease. So I wouldn't have had the fever, but I certainly had the tiredness. I just remember feeling exhausted for that entire first semester. Academically, I suffered. So I'm not shy about that. I had a failing grade point average that first semester. Was put on academic probation. It was really, really tough for me. What I want to highlight, though, is that, and we'll get into the career changes that I've had, is that the average person changes career paths 8 times before they settle on the career that will take them through retirement, say. So let's look at a bunch of mine. As I mentioned, I entered college in 1997. I attempted to transfer to a completely different school in 98. That didn't work. It was the best decision for me, though. I remained at Virginia Tech, but I did try to change my major. So I entered college as a dual degree double major. What that means is I had aspirations of going to medical school. And I thought, well, if I don't get into medical school, because everyone was saying how hard it was, I was thinking to myself that with an additional business degree, at least I could work in hospital administration and get a career going there. So when it came time to sign up for these degrees, I looked at the course workload and I realized that with 2 additional classes, I could also get a minor in chemistry along with my biology degree. And then I realized that with business, with 2 additional classes, I could get a marketing degree. And I was like, oh, let's just do that. As if I could put the world on my shoulders with a full 40-hour work week on the basketball court. It was too much. And that's part of the reason that contributed to my failure. That said, in 2001, I had had enough, and I had the opportunity to take advantage of the fact that there was interest in me as a professional athlete. So in 2001, I was drafted 3rd round to the WNBA. I didn't make the team that I was drafted to, but it really started a full-time professional basketball career in Europe. So I have lived in places like Spain, Israel, Russia. I've visited places like Kosovo. I've been to Croatia. I had a wonderful time traveling around Europe. I saw many amazing places. But around 2007, that was coming to an end. My uncle, my father's brother, is a musician in Montreal. And once I uh, retired from basketball, he invited me to Montreal, where he was recording an album to sing background vocals. And that actually started a 3-year singing career where I was singing with bands. I had my own personal band. We were writing music and making covers. And I was singing in lounges. I love jazz music, and it was a wonderful time until I was deported. So I was deported from Canada and ended up in Boston, where I have 2 brothers. And during that time, I needed to figure out a way to support myself, and I moonlighted as a nanny. I actually started getting into the childcare service, which is a booming industry in cities like New York and Boston. Childcare professionals there can command as much as 6 figures. If they're trained properly and have all of the credentials. And I was one of those people that was about to book those 6-figure deals when my old academic advisor from Virginia Tech reached out to me and said, "It's every year I contact you. Are you ready for the NCAA degree completion program?" And I said, yes. So what that program is it's a program for student athletes that have gone to college and left for whatever reason and have 1 more year of classes remaining in order to complete their undergraduate degree. So I applied to the NCAA Degree Completion Award with the help of Katie Ammons Cross, who was my academic advisor. And I was awarded that funding to go back to school for free for a 5th year to complete my undergraduate degree, which at that point I had dropped business and was focusing completely on the biology and the biological interests that I had. A lot of that interest was re-sparked when I was in Boston. I met accidentally one of the co-directors for the Center of Regenerative Medicine at Boston University. His name is Dr. George Murphy, and he's a stem cell biologist. And pardon me, and he let me crash his lab in order to just re-spark that interest in science. And the things that he was doing at that time were just absolutely fantastic. I was a witness to cells that he was growing. These cells are special stem cells called induced pluripotent stem cells. And at that time, he was growing cells in a fashion such that they would turn into cardiomyocytes, essentially. And what that means is they would essentially be heart cells. And when they were grown together, could beat or contract in sync, just as your heart cells and your heart muscle do. And I was just overjoyed with those demonstrations of how far science had come from the science that I had seen and been taught in college to that point. And I was just like, I have to go back and get to my degree. And not only that, I need to pursue an even like higher education degree than just college. And so with that, I went back to college. I finished in 2012 and I applied for a prep program, which is the post-baccalaureate research and education program. It's sponsored by the National Institutes of Health. And it's essentially a post-bac program that helps support students who wish to go to graduate degrees in STEM. And I applied to that program. I got into that program. I spent 2 years before I was then accepted into the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, also known as ACOM. So I entered in 2014 to ACOM. I'm not a doctor yet. I know Takiwa introduced me as such, but that oral defense is still pending, but it's coming soon. And there I was able to study further more specific biological processes, and the subject matter that I was most intrigued by is immunology, which is the study of one's immune system. I'm one of 7 children, and it was really fascinating for me to be the only child that was not bottle fed, but I was also the healthiest, I would say, of all of my brothers and sisters. I never had any allergies. I didn't walk into a room that was dusty and start sneezing all over the place. And I had never really had any severe broken bones. And to this day, I would say I've never broken a bone. I have had some major ligament tears from sports and such, but more or less, I've just been built for tough, as one would say. And so, uh, knowing that there were cells in the body that were contributing to my health and the prevention of getting sick was fascinating for me. And so I decided to study that full time. So, what I learned, however, outside of college is that you're also learning in these real world situations. I was playing in Russia, of all places. And, even though there's not a lot of people there that speak English, I learned Russian. I was communicating with the people that were there, but I was also learning how to interact with people. And, the interaction and social dynamics of people is also a study. Sociology is really important for people who study or who become policemen or forensic pathologists, so to speak. It's really important to understand the tendencies of people, which also plays into economics in a way for people who are out there thinking about, well, how does this, integrate or intersect with business and other types of things? It's everything falls in line with each other. And the more that you start studying it, the more you realize that this is the case. So I got a lot of global learning experience when I was playing basketball and also when I was singing in Montreal. But let's focus more on the science. So, as an immunologist during COVID, it was really important to me to help people understand how immune cells work to fight disease, as well as how vaccines help train your immune system to fight off disease. And so I founded Simon Peter K Company, also known as SPK Consulting. And with this platform, I was able to host information sessions. And I just want to make it clear that for me, it was not about arguing with people and forcing them to take something that they didn't want to take or that they didn't understand. That didn't make sense to me. What I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about how the virus itself works, how the vaccines work, and how your immune system should work to prevent you from getting sick from the virus, and how the vaccine might be able to help with that. I was very successful with this endeavor. It was not only this experience which helped SPK Consulting grow, but also I had volunteer experience as an early stage biotechnology consultant through a nonprofit organization in New York City for advanced degree candidates called the Solution Lab. And with that experience, I leveraged that to expand SPK Consulting's services to include consulting for early stage biotechnology companies. And so with that, I was able to book and gather contracts that could support me in the first year, which is not something that's easily done. But I was very happy with the early success, which this company continues to grow. But it was one of the major things that attracted a lady named Dr. Audrey Bernstein to my skill set. And so what that skill set is, it included immunology and the business experience. And she had a patent for a therapeutic that she was trying to get to commercialization. And so together we founded Dub Biologics, and we are working together both in a research setting and an academic lab, but also to grow this startup biotechnology company that can treat wound healing. So wound healing, I don't know if you've ever had a cut or a scar. It's a really important disease concept. And I say disease concept because wound healing is not a specific disease, but fibrosis is the underpinning of about a third of all fatalities that happen or occur in the world. And so wound healing or scars and fibrosis are used often synonymously. And you can imagine if you have a heart attack, your heart will form scar tissue. If you have scars in functional tissues, that scarring can impair the function of that tissue. So scarring in your heart prevents your heart from beating properly to get the blood cells going and the oxygen to all of the tissues. And lung fibrosis or lung scarring prevents you from breathing properly or efficiently to get oxygen to your tissues. Liver fibrosis, the list goes on, right? Even strokes cause scarring in your brain where it can impair your cognitive function. So again, we see this therapeutic as being something that can be applied to a lot of therapeutic areas, and we're excited about it. That said, how do I leverage my background for these, this biotechnology venture that's at the intersection of both science and technology? And it really just comes down to my love of science and specifically biology, which is the study of all living things. And when you get more specific to the macro and microbiology of things, you really are getting down sometimes to the subatomic level. And, those interactions become really, really critical. But the thing that separates living things from things that aren't living is the composition really of water. Like water makes up 90% of cells, and the cell is the basic building block of all living things. So I actually just missed a molecule, an activity here where I wanted you to guess the molecule, which seems pretty obvious, but obviously here it's H2O, also known as water. So I remembered, like, if you think about dew on leaves, right? If a leaf is a living thing and you have dew, which is essentially water, then how come the leaves don't absorb water, right? And so that just gets to one of the things that is really important as far as a concept in science where like attracts like water wants to be with other water molecules, and so on and so on. You can use that essentially with lots of different types of chemicals. And so we get to this question, and now we're at a hands-on activity, our first one. And so just take a couple of minutes. If you have some lotion in your home, better if it's cocoa butter or shea butter, but I just want you to go ahead and put some lotion on your hands. And once you've done that, take your other hand or your opposite hand and just get a couple of drops of water from your faucet and just sprinkle it onto your hand. And you can just take a couple of minutes to do that. And I want to point out that if you're doing this activity, if you've joined us and you're able to do this activity, what you'll notice is that the lotion or the cocoa butters or the nut butters, if you have any handy, has provided a barrier to prevent the water from being absorbed by your hand, right? So let's move on and talk about what these barriers might be. So even though cells are the basic building block of all life, cells actually have a building block, and that might be considered a phospholipid. So phospholipids are interesting molecules because they're part fat, part water-loving chemicals, right? So they have a hydrophilic or water-loving quote unquote head, and then they have a hydrophobic water rejecting or not loving or water insoluble tail. And these molecules really gather together to form the outside membrane of all cells. Some cells might have a single phospholipid layer. Most cells have a double membrane. But what you can see from the picture here is that these hydrophilic portions or the hydrophobic tails of the phospholipid actually come together to form the double membrane. So this goes again along with the like attracting like. And of course, the hydrophilic areas are in their like attracting like, coupling together here. And this is actually happening all around us, particularly in our body. But every cell basically is made up of this hydrophilic and hydrophobic interaction, forming a double membrane where inside of the cell you then have other organelles that are made up of single membranes or double membranes that actually provide the function or the life of a cell. So, what makes the phospholipid head water soluble and what makes the hydrophobic tail insoluble? So if you're joining us, now is a time that I want you to get on Google and search, what is it? What chemical, what chemical group or what composition of that hydrophilic head makes it water loving? And what part of that hydrophobic tail makes it water not loving? And just take a couple minutes to do that. This is really, really complicated science, you guys. And so if you don't find the answer, that's totally fine. This is really just a critical thinking moment for you to take some initiative and try to find that answer for yourself. We're not going to have the time to get into it much today or at all. Actually, we're going to move on, but put that on your list of things to do as something that's very interesting and related to what we're doing moving forward. So just get 30 more seconds to do a little bit of background research, and then we'll continue. All right. You might be coming to the end of your searches. And if you've come up with hydrophobic tails are water insoluble because they're made up primarily of carbons, you would be right. And if you came up with phosphate groups as part of the hydrophilic heads, the hydrophilic head that makes it water soluble, then you would be right. And if you want, invite me back, and I'm happy to dive further into this so that we can understand more of the chemical properties of the phospholipids that make it hydrophilic and hydrophobic. But for now, we're going to move on. All right. So now we understand that there are hydrophobic or hydrophilic interactions, or hydrophilic and hydrophobic interactions that help create these barriers for cells, right? So now let's take a moment and think about what else can be water and oil that are mixing together in some type of regard, right? So we can think about, at least me, when I think of like things that are fatty, I think about the animals that are the most fat. And when I think about, well, what animals that are fatty that are often near water, I think of hippos, I think of whales, I think of those two animals primarily because they're really large, blubbery animals that love water. But let's take a minute and think about whales and water. Do whales sink in water? Matter of fact, don't forget that whales are not fish. They're actually mammals. So what happens when whales get in water? They actually float. And why is that? And the reason is that whales are really, really super dense. They have a lot of fat as well. So just as a guess or an activity for mental stimulation at this time, anybody who's following along, I just want you to take a second and think, guess how much composition of fat a whale has. Just take about 10, 15 seconds, just think about how much fat does a whale have in its body, right? Like, it's such an interesting question. We look at the people who are the most fit on earth, men, for example, can have body fat compositions as low as 1 to 3%. Women, typically the most fit women are between 13 and 15%. those are like Olympic champions, right? So who are or what are the compositions that are kind of average for a whale, right? If you guessed at least 50%, you would be right. Whales have about 50% fat. And you can imagine in the depths of the water that they travel in, that it could keep them warm, but that it could also provide them with the density to stay afloat, right? So, which has more density, oil or water? Whales swim. They have the capacity to do that, right? So let's just take a second and understand a little bit better what is density. And right now, we're going to ask that the first video as part of this presentation be played.
We're going to. Hello there, and howdy. I have a question for everyone. Where is it easier to swim? The swimming pool or the ocean? Well, we're going to find out right here, right now. Here I have regular soda and diet soda. The diet soda has a sugar replacement called aspartame. You need a lot less sugar in this diet soda than you would in a regular soda can. And because of that, we actually have a difference in density. Let's show you what that causes in water. Let me have this regular soda in the water, and it sinks. Now we have this diet soda in the water, and it floats. This is because the relative density between the two soda cans actually differs in the water. One is less dense than the water and it floats. One is more dense than the water, so it sinks. But in the ocean, we actually have a lot of salt, which actually increases the density of the water. And let's see the actual effect of that. So slowly but surely, we dip some salt here, here, and there. As you can see, the regular soda actually starts to float just like that. This is why you can actually swim and float a lot easier in the ocean than you can in a swimming pool. Thank you.
Such a fascinating concept, right? So now we have the question again, if you remember my last slide that I shared, which is more dense, oil or water, right? So here in front of me, I have some bottles of water that have different colors from food coloring. And I also have a bottle of mineral oil, or I think it might be baby oil, but it's oil nonetheless. And so what I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do here, if I screen down to show you a little bit more of my messy desk, we're going to take some droppers and include some of these water into the oil and see what happens, right? So we're just going to go at the same time. I have red and I have green. And I'm going to just drop the red first. And look at that. And if I put bigger droplets or more droplets at the same time, the red goes in, sinks all the way to the bottom. And here comes the green. Again, all the way to the bottom, the oil goes. And I'm just going to hold it in front of you. You can also see that more or less, oh, that's too much. More or less, there is no joining of the red droplets of water and the green droplets of water. They stayed separate for the most part anyway. But what do you think will happen if I shook up the bottle? Do you think that like would attract like and that I'd have no more red bubbles and green bubbles of water in the oil? I think that that is something that you guys should test as a home experiment to see what would happen. I think you can guess, but at the same time, that's something that you can totally do at home, and I encourage you to do that. So if we share the slides again and move forward, these types of home experiments where you can test important biological, chemical, and physical concepts in your own home with just simple tools or materials that you have around are all over the place. And a lot of these types of things you can find performed for you by just watching YouTube. And so one of the researchers who's very famous and actually has gone viral recently for her experiments on physical concepts or concepts dealing with the subject of physics is Dr. Karolina Yurakomova, and she's absolutely fantastic. And at this time, I just want to give you two examples of two videos that have gone viral for her where she is testing physical concepts. And we can play them right now.
You insert a tip of the knife into a large, heavy potato. Look, it's barely holding it. Now, if I take a mallet and I hit the handle like this, what will happen? Will the potato drop? Let's check. Love it. Look, the blade went deeper and deeper through the potato because the potato is inertial. It didn't have time to move. It did not move every time when I hit the hand. Now, safety issue. When you decide to remove this potato from the knife, don't touch the knife blade with your fingers. Do this. Done.
Such a fascinating concept dealing with inertia. But let's take a look at the second video.
For this demonstration, you need a lot of courage and faith in the laws of physics. I have here a paper cylinder left over from a roll of toilet paper, and I have a raw egg. I will mount this raw egg on the top of the cylinder. The cylinder is on the plate over the glass with water. Now this courage and faith part comes. I will hit this plate with my hand, and I will hit it hard without hesitation. If I do it right, then the plate will fly, the roll will fly, but the egg will not fly. It has inertia, so it will just fall into this glass with water. If I lose my confidence in physics, then and I don't hit it hard enough, then this plate will fly too slow. The egg will fly away, and I'll create a mess. Let's see what I can do. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Again, just fascinating testing of physical concepts that are really important and that are also used in interactions inside of the cell. So you may think, what does mass, what does gravity, what does force have to do with a plate and egg and me? More than you think. And when you start to take in all of these different types of conceptual experiments that you can just do in your home with simple materials, the more that you'll be able to grasp these concepts that are really pivotal for how biology and technology can intersect and interact with each other. So let's move on. We're almost done. Now, we've introduced you to Dr. Tatiana Yurakomova from Texas A&M, but she's not the only one. There are many, many, many other scientists, researchers who are posting their videos on YouTube, on TikTok. They may not be going viral, but there's a lot of information out there if you just want to seek it. And of course, there's programs like SimLink. If you go to the next slide, we can talk about how SimLink can really help foster your curiosity by teaching you some concepts that are really important for researchers, just like testing things, testing these concepts, right? Don't just take a scientist's word for it. You really want to pressure test, so to speak, what they're saying and how it actually may hold true in different systems, right? You want to communicate with people who are talking about the science or the types of STEM, science, engineering, math, technology is included in that too. Those types of conversations that are most interesting for you, talk to the professionals, talk to the people who may not know very much. Maybe they can learn something from you. And in all of that curiosity and talking about what you're curious about and learning from people who are doing these science experiments online, you are giving yourself the tools to be very successful early in your scientific career. And your scientific career starts now. It starts with those little things that you're helping yourself do by preparing you on how to think, how to communicate, and how to really understand concepts that are really, really important in the subject matter that is important to you. And with this presentation, I just want to say that, guys, I'm really looking forward to see all of you as fascinating researchers in STEM in the future. And I just want to thank ABR, a sponsor for SimLink, and SimLink themselves. Takiwa, you're amazing. I'm here for whatever you want me to do to help, spark interest in the scientific minds of the next generation. And with that, all of you guys who attended this presentation this evening, I want to say thank you to you as well. I am done and happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, so no one put questions in the chat, but I have a few questions that can guide us. So the first thing is, with you liking sports in high school, and you said you started this curiosity of science from very, very young, what made you feel like it was okay for you to have to make a choice that like science was cool and I can pursue my love of basketball when I go to college?
Right. For me, it was simple. Basketball was my way to college because my parents couldn't afford it. Right. Mm-hmm. So the reality of the situation is, at that time, I didn't know. And in a lot of ways, I was going through the motions, but also I was very far removed from academia. I feel like if I had been a student rather than a student athlete, I would have come a lot earlier to the decision or the path that I wanted to stay in and focus in on as far as science and biology, immunology specifically. I came to immunology really late. That said, I think that I would have been on the career path much earlier as far as biology is concerned. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. Like, everything happens in its own time. And I also firmly believe that at that time, I wasn't ready for the rigor that it takes to really think about concepts doing basketball at the same time. I just wasn't ready. When I was playing professional, I wasted a lot of time partying. So at that time, I was ready. I just wasn't, I was far removed from it. And it took some help to come back to science.
No, I get that. And I like that. I feel like sometimes kids are taught, and even as adults, right, that we have to have this one path and we can't come back to something. So you mentioned that an advisor encouraged you to come back.
Yes.
But did you just come back because of her encouragement, or do you think that because you were able to explore your other interests,
right,
you're ready to come back at that time?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that, first of all, my academic advisor is like one of the best, right? I mean, she didn't just contact me that year. She contacted me every year after I left. And I told her every year, I'm not going to come back and finish until I'm ready. Like, I want to make sure that I have the center, like the spiritual center, to really attack the studies that I needed to, the studying habits, like that whole academic vibe. As a student, there's a certain mindset that you have to be in to do it and to do it well. And I told her, like, I'm not going to come back until I'm ready. And then in 2011, when she contacted me that spring, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely ready. So it was really her being super diligent and amazing at her job. And also me having gone through everything that I had gone through and being like, well, this sucks. Like, music didn't work out. Like, nannying is cool, but these aren't my kids. I want to, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to get on a career path that has a lot of longevity for myself. And 2011 was the time to do it for sure.
That's great. My other question is, you had talked about noticing that you were protected of diseases and ailments because you were breastfed, and that shifted you into immunology. And so that triggered your work. But what kept your interest, and
What
how?
piqued my interest, you mean? No, this is going to sound really crazy, but this is actually true. So my immunology professor, my last year, so I wasn't a senior technically because I had already left my senior year. But when I came back in 2011, I took one of the classes that I took was immunology, hardest class in the biological sciences department. Everyone knew it, but I took it because I was like, kind of like, sounds interesting. Let me just take this. But then when I got into the classes on a daily basis and was listening to the lectures, I was hooked. And really, it was one of the first lectures from the professor and this concept of disease, right? And essentially, what started to grow in my mind, being a Marvel Comics and DC Comics fanatic, I really started to think about what was the movie with Samuel L. Jackson and Woody Harrelson? Was it Fracture? That's not the right movie.
Oh, Unbreakable with Bruce Willis.
Unbreakable, exactly. And this concept of people who just, for some reason, are super, super fragile in their immune system and can get sick from anything. And then the opposite side of that coin, where you have people who are superhuman in some regards with their resistance to disease and infection and getting sick. And that really has been the driving force for me and my I love immunology. I can talk about it all day. Like the things that people are able to do right now as far as cancer therapeutics, also known as immuno-oncologics.
I know, I was like, I can't say this word.
You almost had it. But the things that people are able to do right now scientifically, they're able to take your own T cells out of your body and train those T cells to be better fighters against cancer cells. And these types of cell therapies are going to be the next wave of cancer therapies that are super effective, moving us much closer to what's called personalized medicine, where really essentially what we're doing is we're providing you the tools that you yourself make that will keep you healthy by just boosting what you already have. Like if you were Samuel L's character, I forget his character's name in that movie, but he was super, super frail. But by taking his own cells and giving them more life, essentially, to be effective in the way that they're effective cell fighters against disease and make him healthier, right? And so it's kind of like sci-fi, but it's happening in real life. And being able to be in this industry to actually work on some of these projects is just, it's a dream come true.
So the other question I have is, what made you go the entrepreneurship route versus saying, I'm going to go to academia, I'm going to work for some company?
Right. I really think that the best work that I've ever done and have been able to conduct has come from like the hustle, right? And very well, as an entrepreneur, you're always on the grind or on that hustle. And I think that pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, where I have a W-2 check coming every 2 weeks, and there's a lot of security there that's safe. And I think that to push the boundaries of what I'm trying to push the boundaries for, it's really important to kind of stay in this mindset that it's possible because you've made it happen type of vibe, you know what I mean? And not accepting the status quo because people have said that this is the way it works and this is so. And what I mean by that is not accepting that people say, oh, your therapeutic isn't going to work. And rather than accepting that thought, rejecting it, and then finding the way that your therapeutic does work. And these are the people or the therapeutics that actually make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I think that is a great point because with the entrepreneurship, you have the trade off, right? Of going someplace, you do have the security of the benefits and,
Yep.
all of that. But the innovation and the
Yeah,
able to you to be create, that's one of, I feel like, is the beauty of entrepreneurship.
for sure.
Your limits are you. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, because you have to limit like funding, whatever. But as far as like the ideas you want to
Right,
create and make happen,
right,
you are the limitations, not
right.
someone else. And so that's the beauty of entrepreneurship.
With
So
biotechnology, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just
go
want to say
ahead.
with biotechnology, it's that, and it's got other complicated pieces like, FDA regulations, like what are they going to improve, and how can I provide evidence to them that my drug actually works so that they can approve the drug, right? And then finding out the best dose and the best scenario that it would work. So these are like pieces of a puzzle. And so, like, as someone who's like, I love video games, I love gaming, I love puzzles, it all just keeps me super fascinated and locked in.
That's great. So this is my last question, and it may be like a flashback words of wisdom, but um, I am always like trying to debunk what a STEM professional looks like and what is cool. And so I'm a person like you. I didn't play sports, but I like sports because I don't like to sweat like that. It just the workout sweating is enough. You're
Right,
gonna work
right,
out and play a game, but we're told like there's this linear path, right? Or you can
mhm,
only focus on one thing at a time. So for those people that love STEM and like either love music or love art, what can they learn from your experience? Maybe tips that you can give them on how they can pursue those simultaneously. Because I know you have some like hindsight, like, we all know if we could go back to 18
right,
and 19, we would do things
right, right,
differently.
right.
What are the advice or words of wisdom you can give for people that like science and something else
Right.
and don't feel like they have to make a choice? They can find a way to do both.
So I don't know if I'm the best person
Mhm,
to ask this of, because the
mhm.
way that I was raised, it was like, with God, all things are possible. And so anytime anybody was just like, no, you have to, to do this, you have to do it this way. And I'd just be like, no, I'm going to figure out the way that works for me to do
Mhm.
this thing. And that was really instilled to me. I mean, like, God bless my dad. He was just a hustler. I saw him like, okay, Black men in the South. This is how old was I? Oh my God, this had to be 30 years ago, right?
Mhm.
Grew his own vegetables, had a garden, was a woodworker, right? So he made shelves, he made baby doll houses from wood, and he would craft them in a craft, like in a shed outside of our house. Crocheted. My dad crochets hats, scarves. Like, what Black man do you know that does this, right?
Mhm.
Baked bread. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying just like baked bread for us. We sold bread at the farmer's market as a family. You know what I mean? And he was a police officer full time who was a 3-sport athlete in high school who also coached football outside of work hours. You know what I mean? So like,
Mhm.
when I grew up watching this multi-dimensional person, so it was never a concept that I subscribed to because I watched it in real life in a completely different manner, right? And
Mhm.
so that's why I say I'm not really the best person to ask, because I never accepted that type of people have one dimensional. That's inherently false, right?
Mhm.
Like, you have hobbies outside of SimLink, outside of
Mhm.
engineering, right? You may not talk to the kids that much about it, but like, you certainly do. We are not unidimensional beings. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And so, for any of you who are watching and listening to me talk passionately about this, pursue the things that interest you. You're never going to know what path you need to be on without trying different things. And that's all I'll say about it. You just need to try, and you need to learn that I like this thing, or you need to learn that you don't like this other thing. And then to do more of the thing that you like, but you won't know that you like it until you do it. And so it's just, you know, get out there and do. I'm a big fan of doing.
Yeah, but I think you are the fine person to do that because I think that that's sometimes how we shift our perspective, right? Seeing people who have different experiences, and that gives us a vision of
Maybe.
what's possible, right?
Maybe, but
So
I've never felt when people are just like, oh, if you want to do this, you have to do it this way. I've never
felt that way.
been like, oh yeah, no. It's like, I'll listen to what you have to say and then I'll go and I'll do it the way that I feel like is right for me. And I think I've always been like that. I've always like kind of danced to the beat of my own drum. So I was like that weird chick in high school who just did everything, but like I wasn't like, you know, people respected me or whatever, but I certainly wasn't, you know, playing by the rules then, and I certainly don't play by the rules now.
No, that's a great lesson and you said some great points about trying things that you're interested. That's the only way you'll know what you like and what you're good at. And you just said, like, don't realize we're multidimensional people, right? So we can pursue various interests. And so I'm just going to take that advice and remind the teens for that advice that, yes, you know, they may not have an environment like you felt the freedom to try everything, but no, you know, within reasons, you know, because you are children, right? And adults, you know, have to tell you what to do, but within reason, you know, don't get kicked out the house because you can't work, right? But within reason, find ways to explore your diversity of interests and know like it is possible to do multiple things.
Exactly. 1000%. And again, like, I think that we're getting away from that type of mindset that humans are unidimensional, especially like when you think about the celebrities that we see now. They're into a lot of things, right? Like artists are now videographers and photographers and podcasters and, you know, have clothing lines, so they're designers and all, you know what I mean? So it's not just about, it may for some just be about getting quote unquote the bag. But I think in large part, it started because people were really passionate about pursuing those types of creativities mentally. I think Kanye West has been very vocal about, you know, his artistry and how it feeds into the different types of formats that he chooses to express his art, right? And I think that other people are jumping on that bandwagon or have because they've recognized that there's money to be made. But it comes from a foundational source of interest, right? Like if you're not interested in it, it's not going to sell because people inherently are going to be able to sense that you're not buying into what you're trying to, you know what I'm saying, put on people. So I don't know.
Yeah, I even think about one of my favorite singers, Khalees, right? Yes. She went to culinary school. Now she has a whole farm. And my friend is like,
her,
they're like, she like Rihanna. We ain't never gonna get no music from them. But you know,
I think actually I heard that she was putting out new music, but I just saw a commercial from her earlier today with smoothies from Uber Eats. I think she's an Uber Eats sponsor now. And they redid the milkshake song to be like talking about smoothies. It was really cute concept. But I think that again, we're not unidimensional beings, and she had children, right? So for her health and wellness, which is a focus for a lot of moms, it really came down to what am I putting in my child? And I think she really she took that organic mindset seriously. And she was like, I don't trust what's in my grocery store. I'm going to grow my own food. And then, I mean, I don't know, is she doing cooking shows just yet? I know she's talking a lot about what she's growing on the farm, the animals that she's got there. But I don't know if
haven't seen her do like a cooking show. I've just seen her talk about her farming, and I think she sells some of the products. And I think she may like do IG lives, but I don't, you know, the cooking show.
And she still does music. I think she just had a show overseas somewhere or some festival.
Yeah, she tours from time to time. I just don't think she's put out any
new music for certain.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Tere. This was so great. And I love to have like people like you that has had a diversity of pathway to STEM so people can know like it's just not the white person.
It's okay. Just be who you are and be that in STEM for sure. I'm here to promote that for sure.
Okay. And whether you're joining us live or catching the replay, we hope that you've learned a lot to guide your own STEM journey. whether that includes you doing just the STEM you're interested in, whether it includes you like doing something interdisciplinary, or whether it's like I do STEM and like STEM and art, STEM and that's the only thing I can think about now. But exploring all of your interests. And thank you so much once again, Terry, for making time. And we will see you at the next
Thank you for
cafe,
having me.
everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye.